Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the farm. I just want to start today's video with a special thank you to everybody for their outpouring of messages yesterday. Yesterday was an extremely difficult day on the farm. We had to put down our old dog, Miko. That was a tough day. And today looks like it's going to be a tough day too, because we got another, there's a car under here. We got another 6 inches of snow overnight. Carmen's been after me to plow snow, and I just haven't had the time because work-life commitments just has kept me very, very busy during daylight hours, and plowing snow in an old tractor with very poor lighting in the dark is kind of a recipe for disaster, and so I haven't done it. Plus, I don't have the grapple on the tractor. It's on a trailer over there. So I'm gonna get the battery charger on the tractor. I'm gonna get the truck fired up. I gotta go pull the trailer with the grapple on it out from where it's at. So hopefully I don't get stuck doing that. And then start moving snow to God knows where. The other thing I gotta do, give everybody lots of feed today. With lots of snow, requires lots of energy for those little sheep to get around. So they're gonna burn lots of energy if they stay out of their shelter. They'll also be burning lots of energy trying to stay warm on a day like today. So we're gonna also fill up the lick tanks, the molasses lick tanks. Make sure they got lots of energy to keep those little furnaces running. And we're gonna do all of this before breakfast. So that's the Saturday morning rules, is that we make sure everybody's taken care of, and then we go have breakfast. So to put it in perspective, how much snow we've got, you can see the doors of the chicken house. I gotta shovel my way in. Coming down the hill, I'm almost to the top of my rubber boots in the snow. So it's a real gem, and that just all transpired here in the last week. And I'm already praying for Chinook season to come by and blow and melt all this stuff away. But for now, I gotta shovel my way into the chicken house. I actually only come down here for the snow shovel so I could shovel my way into the shop to get the big tractor out too. So I'm gonna get my exercise today. So I went ahead, took the tractor out, put it back in already, but I just wanted to get the grader blade on the back and the grapple on the front, and then pull it back in the shop, and we're gonna hook up the hydraulics. I could have done the hydraulics outside, but it's kind of miserable out there. So I just wanted to come in here where it's kind of sheltered out of the wind. If I need tools or anything like that, I got everything I need right here. Now I'm gonna do this right now, feed animals, and then go for breakfast. Then I'll come back and plow snow. I wanna hook the hydraulics up while everything is cold. Specifically because, well, my father-in-law had the tractor, my brother-in-law had the tractor, now I've got it. And I don't know if these hydraulics were hooked up when it was cold or hot or what, but I'm gonna assume that there's fluid in the lines, and therefore if I leave it in the nice warm shop for a couple hours for all this snow to melt off, that hydraulic oil can also heat up in them hoses and expand and pressurize, and then I'm gonna have myself a time trying to make those hydraulic connections. So I'll do it when it's nice and cold. You know, it's kind of funny, just coming out here, getting the tractor all rigged up, getting the grader blade on, the grapple on, all that, just that alone took me probably 45 minutes or an hour. And I've mentioned this in multiple videos, is the less tangible costs we have. And one of those is really your time, and what's that worth to you? And so last night I dedicated some time to participating in a webinar put on by the Peace Country Beef and Forage Association, which, by the way, if you haven't followed them, recommend following them. If they're not in your area or it doesn't apply to you, look for something similar in your area, because there's lots of cool resources, lots of very valuable resources, lots of very valuable information, and something like free webinars. I mean, why would you turn down free learning? It's basically teaching you how to make more money off your farm for free. So anyways, that's what last night's webinar was about, was crunching numbers with a guy named Steve Kenyon. Steve Kenyon's from the Gateway Research Organization. And just speaking about, what does it cost your time? What does it cost your equipment? What does it really cost you to come out here every day and fork hay over to the horses? And morning, Elsie. As you can see, we got a beautiful sunrise just coming up here this morning. Which, I mean, Mother Nature owes us that. If she's gonna throw over a foot of snow at us here in a week, we're gonna need something pretty to look at, because we're not gonna be able to leave and go too far. Anyways, a lot of what Steve was talking about was economics versus finances, and it made total sense. Because what is the difference between the two? We're both talking about numbers, we're both talking about money, but the two are distinctly different. And economics is something like investments, long-term payout, right? Can I afford something if I'm really, if it gives me service over a duration period of time? Versus finances is basically cash flow, what I have in my pocket on any given day and what I can transfer and transfer out, on a regular basis. And so thinking about this in terms of a piece of infrastructure, right? So we put a waterer down there, a heated waterer in 2017? I think it was 2017, yeah. And all in all, by the time we rented the hoe, we bought the pipe, we bought the water, we built the platform, we run power, all that stuff, all in, all said and done, it was about $2,500. Now, $2,500 at the time seemed like, holy man, that's a pile of cash that you just made, because we've got all these other things that we got to pay for, right? So that wasn't really an option to put a second one in. But what I didn't think of at the time was, well, I already had the hoe, right? I was already digging a hole, so that cost would have been a shared cost. I would have had to incur extra water, extra pipe, which would have been probably the cheap side of it, and additional water, which at the time was $600. Now that water today is probably closer to $850 or $900. So with inflation, the price has gone up. So now it's more expensive for me to do that because the materials have gone up. Plus, I also have to get a piece of power mobile equipment like a ditch witch or a little mini track hoe or something like that in again, right? So I've got that rental cost again on top of that. But if I think of a piece of infrastructure like this, a heated water, plumbed in, on a float, powered, everything's fantastic. Life expectancy of that piece of infrastructure is about 25 years. So $2,500 over 20 years, 25 years. I'm looking at less than $10 a month for that thing to run. So can I afford $10 a month? Absolutely I can, right? So it's just getting that mindset of, okay, well, if I put this, I'm making an investment, right? But that cash flow side has to support it. I have to have the free cash flow available to be able to put down that $2,500 and not starve to death between now and 25 years later, essentially. So the other really interesting thing we were talking about was the cost of rotational grazing. So we do rotational grazing here, so it was very applicable to what we do. And there's your initial setup cost, right? You got to have your fence, your cross fence, in some cases, multiple strands of electric fence, posts, energizers, all that stuff. There's all that cost, right? But then what are the less tangible costs of you going down there every day or every second day or whatever your frequency is to move those animals? And balancing, animal density. You want to have high density, short duration typically, but you've also got to balance that with the recovery of your grasses. And so there's some folks out there that are literally going down there moving their cows every day for the sake of moving them every day. So one thing we don't do here on the farm is religiously move every single day or religiously move to a set period of time. There's three factors that we observe. And first and foremost is obviously the grass, right? We're listening to the grass, see what it's doing. We want to keep that grass preferably in its pubescent phase, so it's not too mature, it's not too woody and unpalatable, but it's not so short that it can't take advantage of photosynthesis. And that's really where the pubescent phase is most beneficial, because you're maximizing photosynthesis without getting into the over maturity. The second thing we listen to is the weather forecast, right? If we're looking at not having any amount of rain, well then, we've got to move constantly, right? We do have to tighten up that duration for sure. Because, this last year or this year was a prime example of that, is where, you can very, very quickly overgraze a section of grass that can then not recover. And the third thing that we listen to is the cows. It kind of makes a lot of sense, right? The cows will tell you if they're not getting what they need from that little paddock or that section of pasture that they're in, simply by applying pressure to the fence. And you can notice that before they start wrecking the fence, just simply by, if you go down there with the quad or the side-by-side, or you walk down however you do it, and you go to the gate, if they're standing there waiting for you, you need to tighten up your window a little bit. If you go down there and you open the gate, and then you got to go and herd them and fetch them and bring them in, and they're really not interested in moving, you can probably extend that another 24 or 48 hours. And so that's where it's critical to think about the cost of your time. If you're going down to move every single day, just because Joel Salatin told you to move every single day, well then quite likely you might be burning hours of the day that you could probably spend on task with less effort and more reward, right? So you really have to balance your time. So I'm all done plowing snow here now, got everything all cleaned out, and it begins, the big piles in the windrows. It's always I'm looking at, perhaps we're going to get an awful lot of snow this year. And I mean, I'm not going to complain about that in the sense that, our pastures definitely need the moisture next year, because they certainly didn't get any this year. But snow management, my oh my. When you think about what's the most important or most valuable, I guess, piece of equipment you have on your farm, I know us and definitely a lot of other small farmers probably think about the tractor, right? The tractor is probably one of the biggest ones. And for us, it's, 6 months of the year, we need to move snow. And if we're trapped in snow, we're not able to do any farming. So that tractor is pretty important. And so if you're going to get into buying a tractor, one thing you need to think of before you buy a tractor is, can you pay for it 3 times? And the reason I say 3 times, you imagine, okay, a tractor's $50,000. Now, all of a sudden I'm talking about $150,000. How does that come to play? So there's the 3 I's when you come to buy anything. There's your initial cost, right, which is your $50,000. There's your interest, which is, if you financed a pickup or a house or anything, quite often you're buying one for yourself and one for the dealer. And then inflation. So if I'm buying something over a number of years and I'm trying to amortize and set aside money to buy my next one, 15 or 20 years down the road, whatever the life cycle of that thing is, I also need to set aside amortized funds so that the next time I come to buy a tractor, I recognize that the tractor I buy today at $50,000 is probably going to be, in 25 or 30 years, $150,000. Now, why is all of this important? Why am I telling you all of this? Well, I'm encouraging you to think of your farm as a business, not just as, your home and your lifestyle, but think of it as a business. If you really understand why some small farms have failed versus, those that have succeeded, and why is that? The greatest majority of small farms that have succeeded over the last, I would say, 50 years is because a couple of factors. The first and foremost primarily is because land and equipment has been inherited from a previous generation, so they haven't had to invest massive amounts of upfront capital to gain access to a revenue stream. And the second reason is land appreciation. You buy land always increases in value, or at least it has, again, in the last 50 years. And it usually, traditionally has increased in value. So then I'm able to borrow money based on increased equity in the land, but really my land isn't any more than it was before. It doesn't give me any more than it ever has before. It's just its value has increased because it's a finite resource. And so a lot of farmers have been able to be successful based on the fact their land value is appreciated and they didn't have any startup costs. So if you're like us, where you had all the startup costs and you paid probably too much because land value was exceptionally high when we got into this, for sure, you got to keep the numbers in mind, because there is no margin to be loose with. You have to be very business minded if you're going to succeed. And if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to be business minded, well, then you're going to have to put an awful lot of time in off farm to gain off farm income to carry the place, essentially. Anyways, it's been a very cold morning. I've got all my snow plowing done. I've got all my feeding and chores done. I think it's time for a cup of tea. So I'll let you go for now. I hope you have a fantastic day. We'll see you tomorrow.